Hello, this is H.G. Bailey, and welcome to another bonus episode of Let's Play SimCity. Let's actually plan out another city. So last time we figured out where the center of the city is, and one of you guys was telling me, H.G. Bailey, there's a slightly easier way that you could figure out where the center is, at least the way that I'm doing it. On this map, I could just use an equation to add them all up much more quickly. So we start at A1, then we go to DP1, and, well, that doesn't do it there, but let's see, down here, just copy and paste the equation, boom, you've got the sum of all the zones at the y-axis of the city, and you could do the same thing for the x-axis down here as well. I could actually put all of this stuff on the map area there if I really wanted to. But yeah, that way I don't have to constantly go back and forth copying and pasting the values. I can just do that all at once. So thanks for letting me know about that. I only figured out how to calculate the center of a city like a few days ago. So I always thought it'd be really hard to figure it out, but nope, it can be pretty easy. Okay, so now that we know where the center of the city is, there we go. So I want to figure out where everything's gonna go. So with the residential zones, yeah, you want to keep them in the green scale areas of the city here. And any that are in there will have no problem developing up to level 5 at least, without the assistance of a gift or parks or any of that. And then I want to surround those residential zones with a layer of commercial zones to isolate them from the rest of the city in the corners, which is going to be where the industrial zones will be with all their pollution. So that's just a general idea of where things will go. But let's figure out where some other things are, like gifts, police departments, and fire departments. I want to figure all that out before I start really making a full map here. So what I like to do is, let's figure out the gifts first. So take your 4x4 grid, and then put your rails, or however you're going to be arranging the city with all the transportation. And then there's a few factors that I would take into account with determining where you want to put your gifts. The first criteria is that you want it to be in a position where you have at least one tile of the gift on 4x4 regions, so it'll max out the land value in those areas. But this isn't a really good location for that, because it'll boost the land value of the 5 zones on this side of the rail tracks, but it won't work on the other side, because the center of the zones that would be over here would not be in a 4x4 region boosted by the gift, so it's basically useless to them. So you want to put them in a position like here, where the center of a zone on the other side of the tracks will be in one of those zones, the 4x4 region, that is. So that way, all of the zones surrounding it will be able to benefit from it. But let's say I put a gift up here and ignore the bug with tops for not being able to form on the top row there. If I put a gift here, then the problem is that I'll have, let's say, 3 zones on this side of the railroad tracks, 5 over here, all of them benefit from the gift, but the thing is that in order to form a C-top or an R-top, you need 2 zones right next to each other to make that happen. So I got 3 here, though. I'm only going to be able to form 1 top there. Out of the 5, I'm only going to be able to get 2 there. So 2 of the zones basically go to waste if I just do it like that. But if I place 2 gifts or space them out, so that way I have 2 zones in between them. They'll both be able to join together or merge together to form a top. So you'll have 3, 5, 3, 5. So 6 over here, 10 over here, and that'll be able to let you create 8 tops between the 2 of them. So like 1 here, 1 here, 1 in the middle, 1 here, and then 3 on this side. So you'll get 8 tops, an average of 4 per gift there, and that's the best that can be done with that. Unless you want to use like a donut build, like over here I got a donut, but I generally don't use those throughout a city. I prefer the column build. So the way that I've got this set up is I can either put a gift on the left or the right side of a column here. But where I choose to put them will depend on how police coverage works. So let's go take a look at that. So you want to start with an 8x8 grid, like this, and then put your rails on top of it, like I did with the gifts there. And in general, if you're on easy or medium difficulty, I like to put a police department in all of the green 8x8 regions. And that'll basically annihilate crime. But I don't necessarily do it everywhere, because like over here, this is where I had a police headquarters, and there's an 8x8 region that is not covered by a police department, but the coverage from the headquarters is so much greater that it compensates for that. So I can skip a few 8x8 regions, but not too many of them on easy or medium if I want to completely eliminate crime. However, if you're on hard difficulty, we're going to have to make some sacrifices. But first, let's figure out the gifts here on the left or the right side of the columns here. So let's see, let's start over here with a gift, and then go over here. Okay, so that's where one gift is going to be, and another gift would be down here, right? But the thing is that the 8 zones surrounding the 2 gifts will completely cover up this 8x8 region where I would want to put a police department. But I can't, because all the zones are in the way and a police department wouldn't benefit from a gift. So, in this case, I want to put the gift on the right side of the column. That way, I can put a police department somewhere on this side of the tracks and not take away from the land value from the gifts there. Hooray! So, in hard difficulty, or even on easy, really, the way that I figure out where I want to put my police departments is, well, with the 8x8 grid, but I want to condense it a bit so that every 8x8 region is just one little cell like that. Or in this case, one big cell over here. So let's see, with this area, I basically have one cell per 8x8 region with a height of 43. And let me see. Okay. Can't seem to get in there. Ah, there we go. Oh yeah, and a width there of 48. And for some reason, that makes it look perfectly square. At least to me it does. Kind of strange how that works. And for the bottom row, since those are 8x4, I just, make them almost half of that. Okay, so the way that I've got things laid out here, these green and orange tiles are 8x8 regions, that's where I'm going to be putting most of my zones. And then we got these light blue areas that are mostly covered with water, but I could probably fit in 1 or 2 zones in there, maybe a police department, depending on where it is. And then we've got the dark blue areas, which are completely covered with water, or completely enough to where I'm not going to even be able to put a zone or a police department there without the use of a landfill. So in general, don't worry about it. So we got all that, and the way that crime works is, as far as like hindering the development of my zones, is that while police coverage is calculated based on an 8x8 region, the crime itself uses the 2x2 grid here. And if you have a crime rate of at least 190, whatever that means, then it'll reduce the land value by 20. Land value is capped at 250, at least in the 2x2 grid there. So yeah, it's capped at 250. So, and you only need 160 land value in order to develop an R-top or C-top. So that 20 land value really isn't that bad. I mean, that's at the absolute worst. You'll lose 20 land value. So yeah, it's not nearly as big of a deal as perhaps I made it out to be with all of my police departments in a city there. But I'm obsessive, so I wanted to get rid of all of it, or as much as I thought I could. So with the reduction of the land value, that only really matters to residential and commercial zones. So industrial zones don't care about land value for their development, and this is important on hard difficulty because you generate so much less money from taxes that there's no way I would be able to afford to put a police department on every street corner in the city there. So we have to make sacrifices. So what I do is I've created a grid over here where all of these really dark green areas are where I'm only going to have industrial zones, and since they don't care about crime or land value at all, I'm just going to leave them out. Don't worry about them at all. Let's focus my police departments where they're going to make the most impact. So this way I can look at the map here instead of having to go back and forth and figuring out which region is where and all that. So here's one that I came up with where instead of every single green area, I just use mostly every other one, and that should be good enough to get the job done there. The Q's are for the headquarters, the P's are for the regular police departments. Now, I could have put like these 2 police departments over here in those 2 green areas, and that probably would be fine. But since I got these 2 headquarters there, I think it's okay for me to leave a bit of a gap here and move these up here to help block off some of the industrial zones that are encroaching on my residential zones there. So I think that could work a little better there. But otherwise, yeah, this should be able to get the job done. So I may build some other police departments if like something needs it temporarily or something, and then remove them later. Now, police departments, or well, police coverage works the same way as fire department coverage goes. So what I like to do with fire coverage, I'm gonna need fire departments almost everywhere. Basically, I want fire departments to protect my gifts because they are irreplaceable. And same thing with some areas with a lot of C-tops, because those are really hard to start over from scratch if I don't have a gift to boost their land value. So what I did here was I put a G where every one of my gifts is going to be. And then I want a fire department either right on top of the gift or in between them or right next to them, however the situation is. Like right here, I have a gift, but since I'm able to put a fire department in the 8x8 region without interfering with top development, that's okay. I just put it on top of there just so I know I have a gift and a fire department there. So the F's are for the fire departments, the Q's are for the headquarters there. So I put a fire department between every pair of gifts, and then I put a few extra fire departments out of the way where I'm going to have a lot of tops, but not a lot of gifts there. So the idea, on hard difficulty at least, is to have like 16 police departments, 16 fire departments, and then the 3 headquarters of each, so 19 of each of those. So I have a general idea of where I want all of these to end up. And remember, this is based on the center tile of the police and the fire departments there. So now, for creating the layout of the city, just use the 8x8 grid. Well, actually, I mean, we got the coverage map right here with the rails on that. And then add the gifts to wherever they will benefit both the 4x4 region and the stay out of the way of the police departments in the 8x8 regions. So you see here, we got a gift where the center tile is in this 8x8 region, and I can put a fire department anywhere in this column here as long as the center tile is in the 8x8 region, and that'll help cover both of the gifts. And really, you don't need a lot of fire departments to make a huge difference on your city. So like, let's say I had a fire over here and I don't have a fire department in the area. So for a fire to be put out with 0 coverage, you have a 1 in 11 chance of the fire just burning out or not being able to spread or anything like that. But if you have at least 1 fire department coverage in the area, that greatly reduces or increases the odds to a 1 in 4 chance per week. So even on like a medium city where I could have the money for more fire departments, you really don't need it. I mean, you just need like just 1 and you'll be good. That'll really help out a lot. I mean, if you have more fire coverage, it'll further increase the odds of putting out a fire. But really, you just need a little bit everywhere, and that'll be fine with the way that I have things set up. So in order to fill this area with zones, let's get my residential map over here. If I can actually see the map while I'm doing this, so much the better. Okay, so put that there, and then, okay, so what I can do is, let's see, if I go Control, Page Up, I can switch tabs, and Page Down to get to back here, so I can just kind of flicker in between there to see where I want my residential zones. So I'd put one here, and over here, and just keep on going throughout the city with all that. And of course, put my police and fire departments where I have them designated. Just don't get in the way of any gifts, and you'll be fine. So we got the gifts, then the police and fire departments, add those in there, and then get all of your zones put in there. And this is something that I've come up with. I don't know if I'll actually use this or not, but this is just something I was thinking about doing with hard difficulty. So like in this one, let's see. So you see here, we've got some residential zones that are outside of the designated area. But that's okay over there because we got gifts to help that out. Same thing up here in the corners. If you got a couple gifts, you will be able to develop even an R-top as long as you got a layer of commercial zones surrounding them so the pollution doesn't get inside. And I'm not even worried about crime in the corners. I don't need police departments over there, even for the commercial and residential zones. They will develop into tops anyway. And you might notice in hard difficulty, I have a lot more power plants in the corners of the city. And those are mostly for like coal power plants, because the rate of a nuclear meltdown is greatly increased on hard difficulty, and I don't want to have to deal with that. But coal power plants don't produce nearly as much power as nuclear power plants do, so it's a bit of a trade-off. But I'm just replacing where I would otherwise put industrial zones anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And oddly enough, a coal power plant doesn't put out that much more pollution than a single industrial zone does. Oddly enough, kind of strange how that works out. Something I've thought about doing is maybe putting just one nuclear power plant in the corners of the city so that I could get a lot more power out of them, but still mostly rely on coal power plants and mitigate the odds of a nuclear meltdown happening. And even if it did, it would only like hurt this area, so it's not really a huge problem there. But I think I would rather just use coal power plants, build some more of them, because really I'm taking a pretty big risk of a nuclear meltdown for all I could really do is build more industrial zones, and I've already got more than enough of them there. So yeah, I think I'm just happy with the coal power plants. Just put them in the corners, dump the pollution on the other side of the border, and then it's the next guy's problem. So yeah, some other areas around here, like, yeah, where I'm exceeding beyond the designated area there, if I can actually see what I'm doing. There we go. So yeah, I got like one here that's out of the way, or out of that area, but we've got gifts to help out. You just don't want to have residential and or commercial zones on the very top row of zones, because they won't be able to develop into a stable top. And then when I'm actually building my city, when I'm not using a money cheat, which I don't, then I need to figure out how many zones, or of each type of zone, I want to have that I'm building at a time. Like, you remember during the building of some other zones, it was like, okay, I need 4, 2, and 3 of the zone types, or whatever. So let's take a look at how I figure that out. And this will vary depending on what difficulty you're using. So like on, well, let me show you how the calculations work here, and then I'll go from there. So here's just the flat number of zones, which is mostly useless by itself. What really matters are the levels of each zone type. And then however many tops you've got there. So, like for residential zones, I'm not going to develop most of them into tops, so I have to manually enter in, okay, here's how many tops I have, or how many I'm going to have there. But with commercial zones, I almost always build them in groups of 2 to develop into tops, so I just divide the commercial zones by 2 like that. Industrial zones don't have tops, so don't worry about that. And then for the equation is basically, so when a residential zone develops into a top or a commercial zone, that's a level 6 per zone in there. So that's 12 levels of the zone type, and then multiply that by the number of tops. So that part is easy enough, but then there's the rest of the zones that are not tops. So I take the number of residential zones minus 2 times the number of tops, and then those are only going to be level 5, so that's where I got the 5 there. So that figures out how many residential levels I've got. And it's pretty much the same thing for commercial zones. And for industrial zones, they cap at level 4. So, yeah, just 4 times the number of industrial zones you got. And these are the sums of the number of zones and the levels that I've got. And then the percentage of the total zone levels that I have is just the levels divided by the total number of levels. So same for commercial and industrial there. This number represents the ratio of industrial to commercial zones. And this one, generally the idea when I'm determining the ratio of my zones, I want to keep them as close to 48.5% as I can. A little over or under is fine for balancing your zones. But this generally works pretty well for me with residential zones. So this just tells me how much over or less I'm at for that. Now the thing is, though, is that depending on what difficulty you're playing at, that'll determine how many industrial zone levels you need. So let's say on easy difficulty, I want to have about 8.5% more industrial levels than commercial zone levels because of how they balance out. So I would take that times the number of commercial zone levels that I have. And then, yeah, I need to truncate that just to whatever I think I can get. And then with these, even if I do that, it's not a multiple of 4 for the industrial zones. So what I like to do is divide that by 4 and then multiply that by 4. So that way it'll round to, or round down to the nearest 4 industrial zone levels. And there we go. So yeah, it's not quite, actually hold on, let me change something there. Well, however it ends up working. But yeah, it's not quite 8.5% more, but it's as close as we're gonna get, and that's fine. That'll be good enough. And then over here, I basically reverse engineer the number of industrial zones that I want. So take that divided by 4, boom, I've got the number of industrial zones that will reasonably balance out with the number of commercial zones. But remember, it's the levels that actually matter, not the number of zones there. And the reason I like 48.5% for my residential zones is because the algorithm for balancing zones for like unemployment is based on having a 2-to-1-to-1 ratio for RCI zones. But I'd like to have a little more commercial and industrial zones, so that way I can completely eliminate unemployment. So instead of 50%, I like going down to like 48.5%. So let's see how many residential zones I would need for that. So this one I have to, well, I don't have to calculate it manually, but it's just faster. Okay, so we got 65 or 64 with 14 tops, and just keep it as close to 48.5% as you can, and that'll be good. Now, if you're on medium difficulty, I like keeping the zone levels between commercial and industrial zones as even as I can. So in that case, I would just, make them equal to each other there, which will result in 50% more industrial zones than commercial zones. Now, on hard difficulty, I don't have as much experience with that, but in general, from what I've seen to notice, is that it seems you want to have 2/3 as many industrial zone levels as commercial zone levels. I would think that numbers should be higher, but based on my limited experience with that, that doesn't work. So, since commercial zones cap out at level 6 and industrial zones cap at level 4, just make the number of industrial zones equal to commercial zones, and let's see, with that, with industrial zones, 4 times the number of commercial zones, boom, you've got your 2/3 chance, 2/3 industrial zone levels as commercial zone levels. And then just adjust the number of residential zones that you want to have there. Let's see, so there we go. That's close enough to 48.5%. So I hope you've enjoyed these bonus episodes of Let's Play SimCity. I was thinking about doing a hard city build, particularly because I found some alternate methods to deal with the problems posed by hard difficulty, because money is very difficult to accumulate there. I was thinking maybe I could do like some extra fast forwarding after recording there, so that way all the time that I basically just have to sit there waiting for money, I could fast forward it even more than I could do in recording there. So maybe that could take the edge off a little bit, but I may or may not do it. I'll think about what I want to do with that while I'm getting another project going. This is H.C. Bailey, signing off. Have a good day!